So today, we are going to deconstruct the mechanics of modern psychological warfare. And believe it or not, our analysis kicks off with something incredibly simple from a pretty recent conflict. Just a single piece of paper.
Now, you wouldn't have heard this stark message on the radio or seen it on TV. Back in 2003, this sentence was printed on millions of leaflets that were dropped from the sky all over Iraq. And the analysis we're looking at here argues these were way, way more than just pieces of paper.
You see, the whole idea behind this analysis is that these leaflets weren't just messages. They were a primary weapon in a really sophisticated campaign. The objective wasn't just to inform. It was to achieve psychological domination before a single shot was even fired.
And that right there, that's the absolute key to this whole thing. The immediate goal of the US military, according to this analysis, was something called perception management. The idea was to psychologically shape the battlefield to create an environment where their objections could be met with as little physical resistance as possible.
Okay, so let's really dive into this. The analysis argues that these leaflets had a very specific, almost surgical objective. It was all about dismantling the enemy from the inside out.
So when you break it down like this, the strategy becomes crystal clear. This wasn't about trying to win an argument or a debate. It was about systematically taking apart an opponent's will to even fight and making surrender feel like the only logical, rational choice.
And this whole case study is used to highlight a much, much bigger doctrine, something called narrative control. The core concept here is that shaping the story of the conflict is just as vital, maybe even more so, than actually seizing territory.
Right. So the crucial point here is that war is won in the mind first. The physical battle, well, that just becomes the final act of a drama, where the ending has pretty much already been written. So let's see how that process is supposed to work.
And here is the playbook. This isn't just dropping some simple propaganda. No, this is laid out as a systematic process designed to make a physical victory seem like a foregone conclusion before the real fighting even starts.
Okay, so that was 2003. How has this strategy evolved? Well, the analysis we're looking at draws a direct line from those paper leaflets right to the digital tools of today. The argument is that the core strategy hasn't changed a bit, but the way it's delivered, that has changed dramatically.
This comparison really makes the claim obvious. The fundamental doctrine of narrative control, it's still the same, but what has changed is the technology, which has put its speed, its precision, and its personalization on steroids. We've gone from a broad, one-to-many message to incredibly specific micro-targeting.
So from this viewpoint, the tools have just become infinitely more sophisticated. The analysis concludes that this kind of media dominance is a huge priority now, and it's seen as a central pillar of global power here in the 21st century.
And all of this leads us to a really powerful conclusion, that the very nature of global conflict itself is being redefined by these very strategies.
Ultimately, the argument being presented is that modern wars just aren't fought only with weapons and soldiers anymore. More and more, they're being fought and won on a completely invisible battlefield. The battle for information, for the narrative, and for what we believe.
And so the analysis leaves us all with a pretty provocative thought, one that connects this huge global strategy directly to our own daily lives. As we all try to navigate a world that is just saturated with digital information, the question of who is shaping our perceptions, well, it's more relevant than it has ever been.